Thank you, Naj, for having me here to to address the August House for a keynote address. I often have a dilemma because I always wonder, what do I tell experts who are already working in the development sector? It's really like showing a small light to a big candle that's already burning. But all the same, I've tried to keep it really brief, and I will dwell on the recent insights which are going to be more relevant to the house here. So, first of all, I'm delighted to be here because this conversation is close to our hearts. Graduation and addressing multidimensional poverty has been part of the DNRLM curriculum as a subsidiary subject so far, but I'm happy to now announce that now it's an honors course or a major, as you would call it. So just to tell you that DNRLM is more than 11 years old. We've got a 10 crore SHG women mobilized into 91 lakh SHGs. And so far, we've done a 60,000 crores of capitalization support to our women here. And from our experience, we know that an inclusive strategy really works. But we also know from the same experience that despite a very meticulous inclusive strategy, there are some who still get left behind. And when we talked with the pioneers in the country, the visionaries, officers from Bihar and the partners, and also other experts, we understood that there is something called multidimensional poverty, which is cyclical, which is intergenerational, and sometimes even the propensity to save the minimal amount which is needed to be a part of the SHG is not there. And therefore, even if you mobilize such groups, such families into the SHG fold, they tend to fall out. Because the only thing that really drives them is the next meal and as to where they will source it from. But Bihar's successful implementation of the Satat Jivikoparjan Yojana showed that graduation approach can be scaled and that it can have very significant results. Their results are out. I'm not sure whether they have formally released it due to the elections in mind, but let me tell you, as and when JPAL releases those results, it will be a shot in our arm and the work that we are doing. Inspired by the Bihar Satat Jivikoparjan Yojana, over the last 3 years, we had undertaken 10 pilots in states such as diverse as Jharkhand, Tripura, Assam, Rajasthan, West Bengal, Meghalaya, Karnataka, Maharashtra, Telangana, and Tamil Nadu. Using the same gold standard multidimensional poverty and the graduation approach, and the pilots are in different stages of implementation. The insights are there, and a very, very enthusiasm uptake from the states. Therefore, we know that we were in the right direction. While we were doing all this, there is a lot of global evidence that was coming our way, and CGAP and the Ford Foundation had launched 10 pilots across various countries of the world in the year 2009. And they studied some 21,000 people in Ethiopia, Ghana, Honduras, India, Pakistan, and Peru. And the program showed that even after 3 years of receiving the assets, the program participants on average had significantly more assets, savings, spent more time working, went hungry on fewer days, and experienced lower levels of stress and improved physical health as compared to those who were not part of the program. 5 out of 6 countries showed an improvement, a return ranging from 133 in Ghana to 433% in India. And even after a gap of 7 years, 9 years, there were sustainable changes that did not petter away with the passage of time. Armed with global evidence, if you could speak outside, sir. armed with global evidence, and also the in-house learning from Bihar Satat Jivikoparjan Yojana, and also a few states that were doing similar programs but not graduation approach, we realized that it was time to scale it up and to have a similar program as part of NRLM. Let me tell you that the journey of trying to make this as a subcomponent of NRLM and to get the necessary approvals and the funding was a long, arduous journey. And the partners who've been with us are aware of how difficult this path was. But nothing makes us happier than the approval that we got. And as we are talking, I'm happy to tell you that we've closed the ECs for 10 states, which will launch formally the Samaveshi Ajivika Yojana as a subcomponent of DNRLM. We've roughly covered 85,000 proposed households under these 10 states. Yeah, thank you. This is really a big win because not only did we get the approval of Ministry of Finance, of Niti Aayog, we were also able to convert it into a program which was sequenced, which was making sense to the states, and we got all the approvals. And this program is also specific because not only do we have to take the local geographies into consideration, but there are state-specific difficulties, if I could say, which have to be taken into account. So we could be taking a denotified tribe in West Bengal, or we could be taking PVTGs in Andhra, in Telangana or in Maharashtra. We could be taking single unwed mothers in Meghalaya. And we could be taking such groups which have not been included into the mainstream, such as Joginis, Devdasis, rag pickers. Telangana just got the EC approved, where there is a specific set of community that just lives on the margins who are traditionally rag pickers. So each state has been having very innovative ways of including those that have been left at the margins. So what are the important learnings from our pilots so far and also from the pioneers, that is Bihar Satat Jivikoparjan Yojana? This ultra-poor graduation is designed in such a way that we understand that cyclical poverty debilitates. It not only gives you a scarcity mindset, it also prevents you from breaking that vicious cycle of poverty. Therefore, we've got to have a focus on shifting from low to high productivity so that people move away from subsistence level existence to actually thinking about a future and also thinking about livelihoods which are sustainable and can move them out of poverty. There's something called a big push investment, which makes the ultra-poor graduation approach different. Our DNRLM program does not give any grants or subsidies. These are all loans which have to be returned, but we have taken a deviation from this because for this particular cohort, which are multidimensionally poor, they need a big push investment, which we give in form of livelihood asset transfer, and also for the first 5 months, a consumption grant, which is a small amount but works a long way to give them the food security that they so strongly need. While we do this consumption grant and also the livelihood transfer, our coaches are of very high relevance here because they have to first plan a livelihood with the cohort so that the asset transfer, which is a sizable sum in their life, does not get wasted and is actually utilized for the purpose or the envisaged livelihood that they create. And while I'm talking of coaches, while we have community resource persons and we have more than 5 lakh resource persons in the DNRLM ecosystem, these coaches are very specific, 1:25 ratio, who work with the selected household day on day, week on week, for the entire period of the program, that is 3 years. So this also is a significant deviation from what the regular DNRLM program has been like. And targeted use of capital for asset creation. We help them create assets. It could vary from creating a small plot for vegetable gardening, it could be small animals for livestock, it could be a small kirana shop, or whatever else they think makes their livelihood more sustainable. So, what does this bring into the lives of the households? It gives them the agency that they too have it in them to break out of poverty. And what I find very significant is that when we give them this consumption and this hand holding, they unlearn the learned helplessness. If for generations you've lived in that poverty, wondering how the 2 square meals would be meant for, would be got from, it is very difficult to think of anything else, leave alone any grandiose plans about livelihood. So the coaching support helps them unlearn this. And how do we maintain the program's fidelity? How do we ensure that we are delivering on what we have committed? By the way, in the guidelines that we've gotten approved and shared with the states, we have specific committed targets which we have to achieve. Things like how many government programs entitlement have they been provided with? How much has the savings increased? How much has been the asset transfer? Has there been a reduction of health shocks? Has there been vaccination? Have the children gone back to school? And all these commitments are very sequentially targeted and studied by way of an app, which is called the Sarthi app, which the Ministry of Rural Development has launched, and also by way of baseline, midline, process evaluation, and also endline. And we also begin this program by way of a systematic scoping which our development sector partners undertake for us. Therefore, it is not like shooting in the dark. We specifically pick up geographies where the states really think that this intervention will be needed. I would like to highlight the role of technology because when we are given funds, the finance is increasingly asking us how we're using it, how effective it is. Therefore, it is important to understand how the funds are being utilized, which can only happen if we have a real-time tracking and monitoring on a device, which the Sarathi app brings to the forefront. And we are also going to use this for data analytics, which will also help us in midterm course correction. And it will give us insights from the reviews so that not just us at the national level, but also the states could learn from each other. In conclusion, what I'd like to say is that DNRLM, along with all our partners, are committed to making this a success. The ultra poor graduation approach, which we call Samaveshi Ajivika Yojana, and therefore we would continue to do the monitoring and the hand-holding long after the program is over, the 3-year period, so that they do not slip back into poverty. We are also looking at institutional integration so that the graduated members are encouraged to take leadership roles. A very significant part of this, which we will work on, is the convergence with other line department and ministries, because education, health, drinking water, garbage disposal, clean toilets, all of it is very vital to not just take them out of poverty, but also to build resilience into their system. We are also committed to support the states with knowledge partnership and also sharing the learnings from not just here, but also across the world. And also the role of SRLMs, which is so important because they keep the partners together and they keep the information flow unhindered both ways. And last but not the least, this program would not be possible without the help of so many partners who are sitting here and some of them who may not be here. But every scoping, every coach that has been trained, every training of trainers that has been done, the knowledge that the partners have got This program would not have seen the light of the day without the help of all of you. So I urge you to continue supporting us, and I'm sure that there will be a time when, towards 2047, we would be proudly announcing to the world that we've tackled multidimensional poverty, and we are making sure that people don't slide back into it. Thank you. Jai Hind.
Congratulations, ma'am, for the approval received on the Samaveshi Ajivika Yojana for the 10 states. I'm sure this program will be very valuable to the underserved community that the program targets. I'm sure a lot of work has gone into making this happen. I would like to call upon our panelists for the next session to join Smriti ji on stage. Shamik Sundar Das, Senior Rural Development Specialist, World Bank, and John Paul, Senior Director, Livelihood Programs, the Nudge Institute. John would be moderating this session. I would also like to point out that during the session, you will see a QR code displayed. And that QR code is for taking questions from the audience. So whenever you see that QR code flashing, you could just scan it and type your question throughout the session. And at the end of the session, all these questions would be taken. So John would be given an iPad, he would be able to see the questions and he would be able to ask those questions to our panelists. Thank you all. Over to you, John.
Thank you, Gitanjali, and congratulations indeed, ma'am, for a huge step forward in serving the most vulnerable households in India. And thank you, ma'am, for the keynote. It was very clear. You walked us through the journey of such an important milestone in not just in DNRLM but in the country, and through the essentials of what does graduation programming mean, what makes a program designed like that deliver impact to the most vulnerable. And that sort of leads me to think and sort of encourage. I want to ask and encourage the audience here to, for a moment, think about who exactly this kind of a program targets and tries to deliver impact. Think of this woman in some remote village in India, has grown up there, has probably not gone to school after her 5th standard or 8th standard, has taken care of her brothers and sisters doing household chores, probably gotten married early, moved to another village, all the while living in subsistence without the confidence and the agency to make a life for herself. Imagine her not having the information, the access to schemes, to markets, to opportunities. And that's the kind of person that DNRLM is built for. But imagine including women like that, but not being able to include and support women into one of the world's largest social infrastructure programs, which is the DNRLM program. That's the woman that we are targeting. How do we get her to gain agency and confidence? How do we give her opportunities? And graduation design does precisely that. We are seeing women go through this program, generate income, generate savings, have the agency and confidence to make decisions for themselves, buy a little something for herself. We're seeing women double their income for their households, start attending Gram Sabha meetings, participating in the social network. Now, how do you do this repeatedly for 1 million households or more? And that's really the question. Now, in this level of attention and coaching that that needs to deliver quality. That's, I want to focus on that particular point. And ma'am, I'll come to you first on this. If this is the woman that we are targeting and we have to serve this kind of a program a million times over, what does it take in your, what will it take in your understanding and in how we have conceived the program at DNRLM? What can we learn from DNRLM's own success to deliver quality at the last mile with all the complexity of vulnerabilities, market conditions, and so on?
Thank you, John, for this question. I would just like to add more vivid images to the picture that John just painted. Who are we working for? Probably a large section of people who are city dwellers may not even understand, but consider this. Deep into Amrabad Reserve Forest of Telangana, there is a woman whose husband has been eaten up by a wild animal. The Aadhaar was in his name. She probably did not have an Aadhaar. And the PDS card was also in his name. So therefore, with his gone one day, suddenly there is not even a PDS. Since she doesn't have an Aadhaar, she doesn't have an identity to prove. Therefore, she does not get PDS. She does not get the entitlements. There are no schools. And in her heart, in the name of assets, she has 5 plastic ghadas with water and 1 machan made of twigs where she sits and cooks her food for scare of the wild animals entering into the forest. And when we met her, she wept. She said, I don't even know where to begin with. Or consider this. In Meghalaya, there are several unwed mothers who are cast away by the family, by the community, and they've got nowhere to go. So there are pockets where they just stay together. No health, no hygiene, no women health, and children, of course, left to languish. And these are the people who are multidimensionally poor who this program aims to address. And then I come to your other question of what do you think it will take? Honestly, I don't have answers. So sorry, John, if you think that I'll have answers. I may not have. But what I do know is that as per the latest Niti Aayog reports, a very rough estimate is that we still have 3.40 crore people who are still multidimensionally poor, plus minus whatever you wish to add, because there's several studies on it. If that is the number, now just consider where we are right now. We did pilots of roughly 50,000 people across 10 states. And now, with several rounds of conversation and approval, we've managed 1 lakh. Going forward, if my EFC gets approved, it's still in the approval stage, we are targeting to capture another 5 lakhs. So, I am made to feel as though I'm running that race with a spoon in my mouth with a potato on top of it. They're saying run till the tape at the end. But I really don't know how to do it all. If that is the number and this is where we are, and if it is a resource-intensive program, can you imagine what it takes? On another similar conference where I think Samik was also there, Shamiran Abid, the lead for BRAC, he said, there is no dearth of money. If every rich person donates a certain amount, which will probably be just chicken feed for him or her, there'll be enough for this program. But where is the money coming from? Against this backdrop, I would like to say, do we have the vision and the capacity to imagine that what all will it take to reach everybody in the country? And if resources are this scarce, I also have this question in my mind: how is it that we can scale it up? How is it that we can encourage states to take up similar programs? Some states have taken. If more states could take it up. If states are not taking it up, how is it that we encourage philanthropy, more partners to come in, so that the resource pool is bigger and we can do coaching, mentoring, supporting at a larger scale? And this crucial 50,000 that is allocated per household, how can we effectively increase this bag so that more number can be reached? And I have no answers. What I do know is that even with the limited resources, there's nothing to be disillusioned about. If we institutionalize training and capacity building, whatever we have within us, we can still reach the numbers. It will be a slow race, but we can still reach there. What we are also looking for, which will make this program successful across states, are more on-ground partners. These are those people who develop coaches, who do the scoping, who are the ears on the ground, who keep telling us whether the fidelity of the program is being maintained. And apart from that, we also have to ensure that we don't cut any corners. And if participatory identification of the poor is a process, if there is a 7-step process for the whole thing, we should not be cutting any corners. We should follow the whole thing. We should have a validation. The Gram Sabha should look at it. The SRLM should own up the selection. And the asset transfer should be done in a very fair and a transparent manner. Last but not the least, if we could have one institution which we could all agree to have, where all this learning, which could be a repository of this learning, so that as and when more partners come, all they have to do is to plug with that institution, take that knowledge and fan out to whichever part of the geography they're wanting to work in. So the challenges are huge, but I am not taking away anything from this big success that we've had. But we have to be on a ground, because the naysayers are also sitting on the side, because they're saying, यही तो सरकार पहले भी करती थी, asset transfer करती थी और वो work नहीं किया, तभी तो हमने NRLM बनाया. Why are you going back? They're also saying, if you transfer assets like this, there'll be more unintended beneficiaries coming into the program. So people are watching us with hawk eyes. Therefore, we've got to not cut corners, stay faithful to the program design, and keep hoping that more and more partners join us and we make 1 + 1 = 11. That is what I think is really needed.
Brilliant. No, thanks, ma'am. That sort of is at the heart of what you've been guiding the entire team on all this while as well, which is how do you stay faithful to the design and not cut corners? We are not short of funds in the country. We have to figure out how to implement this design with fidelity on the ground. And you rightly pointed out to the importance of field coaches, the importance of learning continuously and having a repository that people who join the journey along the way can plug into. And I'll come to you, Shamik, on that. I want you to expand on your understanding and the bank's journey through the last 10-15 years with DNRLM. DNRLM has launched and made success out of many such rural economic inclusion initiatives. What can we learn from that journey, from your lens? And what can we also learn? How does that compare to learning from other countries as well? What can we take so that we can pour those learnings into the success of SAY?
And thanks, John, and thank you, Smriti, for setting the context and also the narratives you gave about the realism in what we are talking about. I think that's really sets the tone of this discussion, because whom are we talking about in this overall discussion? I think if I just reflect back on NRLM when we started, I think why, if you want to scale up a program, if I take that part first, I think how do you situate the program in the vision and the political commitment and bring in implementation leadership? When I say implementation leadership, I've talked about states here. I think that's the key element of driving a program on ground. I think if you can set the program in a way where there is kind of a alignment with these three aspects, there's a vision and there's a political commitment, and then you bring in the leadership. Because of the political commitment, you can really drive this program. I think we've been saying this, and this is what has been the crux of NRLM scale up as one element. The second element, which I think I want to touch upon this point because it's important on the perspective when you're saying scaling economic inclusion, is about institution first. Okay, NRLM always said institution first, an institution of the women, of the poor, and of the left out, and reaching the last mile. I think that's been one of the very, very important, focus of NRLM principles of engagement, right? And wherever, whichever states you go, you would see elements of this. And with that, there was adaptive design of NRLM. There is convergence aspects that brought various other programs on the platform. And most importantly, what NRLM did, I think, for a forum like this is the ecosystem partnership. I think they just didn't become a program supported initially by World Bank and then supported by budget support, and then didn't bring in the elements of learning and knowledge that is coming from other CSO partners, philanthropies, foundations. And it really became a platform not only of the women who they are serving, but also of partner organization who can come and plug and play with it. And I think that is a very big, important success of NRLM. I think very few programs been able to do that in India, if I may say that on this stage. I think that's one aspect that we need to look at. And the other thing which drove NRLM into the success it is today in terms of mobilization of 100 million women into 90 odd lakhs SHGs is basically it could show results on ground. Basically, if that is not happening, then nobody will be really looking at how to scale this program and what is changing at the ground level. So I think these are few elements I could really look at why NRLM happened the way it happened. The second aspect which I have been looking at in terms of literature over various other programs globally and also in India, I think NRLM also started with the poorest of the poor approach. I think it's not that what we have started doing in the last couple of years, 4 or 5 years, in terms of this focus on the graduation approach. I think it's a graduation approach which happened over 10, 15 years, maybe 20 years in some states, which then led to where the residual people, I would say, in terms of were still left behind to come into this journey, I think. And there I define it in 3 ways. If you look at it, and I think, Smriti, you need to look at this aspect. The way I look at it today is survival to stability. That's what we're talking about in this forum. Then from stability to productivity, that is our livelihood agenda. And from productivity to prosperity. I think this, if you put the households into these 3 kind of boxes, and then you see what strategy we need to take, then I think our entire way of looking at things would be very different. Particularly if you going from survival to stability, does the graduation approach work? But we are going from stability to productivity, that's where the livelihood approach come. I think NRLM has been focusing a lot on this of late, and kind of need to shift gears on both sides, on the survival to stability and from productivity to prosperity. I think that's where we need to focus on, and how do we do it is what we need to look at going forward.
Fantastic. I think it's very crisp. You mentioned 3 things that need to come together to make something like DNRLM happen. It's fascinating to see that vision, political alignment, and state leadership. And that's absolutely right. The states have had a huge role to play in taking this central vision to the last mile. You emphasized the 3 ways in which we should look at development: survival to stability, and stability to productivity, and productivity to prosperity. I think it also situates graduation right there in the first category of participants that we want to work with. Going back to the point that you mentioned about focusing on institutions and ecosystem partnerships and how ecosystem partnerships have really helped along the way in building DNRLM. I'm reminded of, ma'am, what you said recently in one of the conversations that, and this might surprise the audience, that across the center, actually I'll ask ma'am to talk about it, the number of non-profit partners that are working with the department, the rural development department at NRLM as well as its SRLM might really surprise people. You know, there is always this question, can non-profits and governments work together? But it's amazing how many people actually work on the ground and at the state level. And you are at the helm of all of this, ma'am, and you have to get many ecosystem partners to work together towards a central purpose. What does it take to have multiple stakeholders with possibly differing objectives, differing approaches, but all running towards the same objective? What does it mean for the ministry to work with ecosystem partners, but also to get them to work together? What does it take?
So that's a tough one. Last I recall, the number of development sector partners that we had at the central level at least were like more than 40. Mona, correct me if I'm wrong. And we don't even have a count of number of big and small organizations that work with the various states. What it takes to work with such a big band of people who may have different priorities at different times. I think one thing is very clear, that the partners that we have just one agenda, that is working and eliminating poverty, which is the goal of NRLM itself. And to give credit to the visionaries who drafted this program will be really in place to acknowledge that. Because even when they were making the first EFC, they said that we will have an organization that will allow such a confluence of partners to work with us, and which is why the society was created. And of late, there was a lot of conversation, I won't go into the details of it, of how the society has done its job and there could be a different PMU. But trust me, the footprint of honest goodness work that NRLM has left behind with help of the partners, I think the policy makers also understood that it would not be a good idea. So that is the relevance of the development sector partners. How do we keep such a big flock together? I will just quote something that I've just recently been reading, and by not in the least, I'm trying to take the entire credit for myself, but for all the people who've been there before me. It's something called pocket presence. In soccer, there's something called the quarterback. I'm not a soccer player, I've just read about it. There's a quarterback who essentially is the team lead, who gets the ball, and there is a pocket-shaped formation around that quarterback, and in less than 2.5 seconds, she or he has to decide who to pass the ball to. My job is of the quarterback. I have to just hold the ball and see who's got what capability, who's got what on the plate, what's the requirement, and then just pass the ball to that person. And over the years, what has really worked for us is pocket presence. When we come into the NRLM, I think we really forget that we are civil servants. And I'm looking for a validation from you. We just work together as a team as though that goal that we need is all that our life depends on. And that's how we work most of the time.
I think
Thank
that's very well put, ma'am. I'll ask you one more question. As we are looking ahead from where we are right now, as you're preparing to scale SAY, what are your expectations from such ecosystem partners? In what specific ways can they contribute? Because I want to also ask the same question to Samik on on what kind of investments are required to support this kind of scale up?
So, for me, I think what I answered in the first one is how do we touch the entire ultra poor population that we have in the country? And these are the answers for, like I said, I don't have. How do we get more partners? I don't even know how much money will it take. So the numbers needs to be done, the math needs to be done. And then have some kind of a visionary plan that if with so many partners, with so many funds, if we do it, then by 2047, everybody, every citizen is part of this Viksit Bharat narrative. So I'm looking for answers rather than giving you this answer.
We'll ask Samik that question now.
I don't know. But I think, let me validate, I got a lot of passes also. I don't know whether I really passed it for a goal or not, but I did get a lot of passes from her too. So that question needs some number crunching, right? Basically in terms of investment requirement. So I was kind of trying to understand what are we talking about here. Of course, multidimensional indicators, indices are important. But if you just look at the way we define it for $2.15 per day as the basic requirement for extreme poverty parameters. So we are talking about 5 to 7 million households in India to cross that barrier, to reach out to. And if you put the vulnerability aspect also, you'll add another 30 to 40 million people who are still vulnerable, plus the existing, which includes the 5 to 7 million households. So let's take the 5 to 7 million households. And if you just do a back of the envelope calculations, it will be around 1 lakh per household investment to support them over 3 years or something, to come out of to bringing all your convergence and other supports that come in. So which leads to around, if I look at my notes, it's around 56 to 60 billion dollars. So around 5 lakh crores, something like that. Is there fiscal space to do something like this? No. So we have to think creatively about how do we attract financing from other sources. And who are the other sources? The lists behind us. Okay? And from private sector, right? So what we need to do that? We need to think about catalytic financing and also maybe development impact bonds. So I think the ministry needs to think about this aspect a lot. I think how they have to think about, if they cannot wait till 2047, I think it's too far. 2047, I think it's too far. Just we have to look at 2030 or 2035 maximum to see India is out of extreme poverty overall. So then how do we mobilize finance? How do we bring capital investments into this sector? It's a question which we need to think together jointly. And that is where we need to break our heads, sit together and seek which states are ready to do kind of development impact bond kind of financing, which is more outcome focused, and link it to CSR funding coming in, maybe high worth individual financing coming in, maybe some corporate financing coming in. I don't know. We need to work with people who are working in these areas to bring that in. I think the time has come. We cannot wait to create fiscal space from the public financing to come into this. If we are in that route, our jobs will be intact, but poverty will be there and extreme poverty will be there, and we will be safe for sure. Thank you. And that's not what I think we are working for.
I just wanted to supplement what Samik just said. Yes, Samik, you did pass some very good passes, and you also converted some into those goals. One of those goals is today we are drafting. We've got the approvals and we are creating a whole new program called the Rural Prosperity and Resilience Program, which we are working closely with not just World Bank, but also ADB. And it's all about rural prosperity and resilience. And some of these innovative ideas like catalytic financing, bonds, equity funds are all going to sit into that design part of the program also. Moreover, we've been brainstorming a lot even for our next EFC. So some of these items hopefully will get approved even in the next EFC. So I don't think we'll really have to wait. But some of these innovative funding models will be in going forward April 26. But before that, I think some of you partners need to sit and talk these details, and have a workshop on it. So what will it take? Samik said some obscenely high number of 5 lakh crores. 70,000 crores. I don't know where we'll get that fund from. So we'll really have to think in new boxes, as they say. But yeah, so we have some of this. So we have been thinking, but yes, we need to have more concrete numbers, which no one as of now is talking about.
I think, yep. The numbers, once you, even back of the envelope calculation really paints the picture, and these conversations, I remember going back a few years, just this invite almost from the ministry, from the bank, saying, hey, the development sector ecosystem needs to go do a little bit of brainstorming and come back with solutions. Because if you are saying that there is a need for development impact bonds and catalytic financing, and if the government is saying we are now exploring and keen to put these instruments to use, then the development ecosystem needs to also think along those lines. Respond to it and start. There is a place for and scope for investing in supporting the ministry, supporting the government in providing technical support, capacity building support, and absolutely essential. That's where the rubber meets the road. And but there is also a space for participating in such creative efforts. In how do we think about creatively leveraging the financing that's out there to scale. Very, very important points that you both brought out there. I do want to go to the audience question, but ma'am, what are the pitfalls that we should be watching out for? I mean, this is massive, this is ambitious, this is one of probably I won't say the most, but one of the most important objectives that we are taking on as a country to serve the last mile. But even as we have evidence that this program works, even as we have the systems, the institutions in place, what are what should we be watching out for in this journey? It's going to be a long journey. Where might we stumble, and what should we be prepared for together as institutions, states, development sector partners, financing institutions?
I think to begin with, the identification of the right beneficiary, it begins from there, because that's where the fingers would be pointed first of all, based on the experience that we've had so far. And after that, end to end, a very transparent system of asset transfers and the evaluations being done with full integrity so that they show the right picture. If the training, there are loopholes in training, we've got to go back to the drawing board, redesign the training for the coaches, making sure that we don't dilute the ratio of the mentoring support, which is 1:25 or 30. Continuously upgrading the skills of not just the coaches, but also everybody who's working on the ground and also who are supporting back end. And always having the humility to own up a mistake if there is a problem in some geography. Immediately do the course correction rather than trying to cover that up. Because while we were doing small numbers, it was all very easy. It was like a lab experiment. But as we fan out, we've just done 11 for the last year of the FC. But in the next year, we'll have it across all states and UTs, whichever comes forward. That is my challenge, that how will I bring so many partners to those states, ensuring the quality that both BRAC and NUDGE have maintained so far. That is the challenge.
Absolutely.
Can I add a couple of things? I think this out of more of my passion on this is about accepting the problem. I think still there is if I may say that, there is non-acceptance of extreme poverty existing in our country at the scale and intensity today. I think the political, agenda on this has to be set. That we need to have a mission on eradicating extreme poverty in India as a mission, and this has to be situated within PMO. Okay, and this experiments, pilots, the clearances we have got needs to add to that, basically, in terms of saying that there is approach to address this, and this is the timeline, this is the cost, and this is how we can do it. It has to be taken at the highest level. It has to be brought into the political economy of how this could convert into votes in the end. Because I'm being very honest here. If you can situate it there, otherwise we will work with MORD, we'll work with people like Smriti, people like various other well-meaning, good bureaucrats, administrator who really wants to make a change. But if you're not going to situate it in the political leadership that we have to get into a mission that 7 million households will be out of poverty by 2035 or whatever that's it, and then see this is the financing requirement and this is how we can bring these resources, then we'll do good. But whether we will be able to really push towards that outcome and objective or the goal that we want to set is to be seen. I think how do we do from beyond this room and going from this room outside is the challenge we have to take on to situate it there. Otherwise we'll do good. No doubt. We are all good, well-meaning people. We have the same mindsets that we're sitting in. But is this discourse that is happening here, how it is getting translated in communication in a simple way to people who can make decisions on this, is what I would suggest.
Fantastic. Two very important points. One, the need for humility and integrity at scale, because the kind of program this is and the kind of resources that are being invested and the questions that it comes with already will require us to be humble, stay curious, and prioritize evidence, and the need to make it a political priority. And that's the only way we can deliver quality at scale. I want to switch to, we have just little over 5 minutes. We'll switch to questions from the audience. The audience has added their questions on. On Menti.
Yeah, so I think it was such an engaging discussion that we've have more than 15 questions. I know you won't be able to take all of them, so maybe you can then choose.
I will prioritize. There are lots of questions that have come. I'll try and not ask questions that both Smriti ma'am and Shamik have already touched upon. Okay. So let me, before we started, Shruti ma'am and Samik were saying, will we really disagree on stage? Let's see how this question pushes you, possibly. I think there is a lot of questions on sustainability of this intervention in the long run. Yes, it's a 3-year program. So, how are we thinking about this model currently adequately serving the last mile beyond 3 years? How are we thinking about integrating climate smart farming, sustainable water use, both in terms of, I think sustainability is being spoken of both in terms of the environmental terms as well as sustainability of outcomes for the household. We raise all of these resources, we set up a really good program, we deliver a 3-year program, but what is it that we are thinking right now about sustaining these outcomes beyond the 3-year intervention period, to both of you?
See, the way this program is structured in this graduation pathway, how far they are able to really leverage the institutions they become part of and the systems they operate in would be critical for the sustainability of the outcomes that we do, particularly for this segment who are from survival to such stability. I think keeping that ecosystem intact for them to be able to benefit out of entitlement programs, convert them into, take leverage the social capital because they're part of the institutional mechanism, convert them into livelihood outcome is where the sustainability will come from. Then comes prosperity and all that is a separate, that's an overall aspect of where they want to go. But I think maintaining them there would be very important too. And I think the kind of social infrastructure this program has created in terms of the institutional model, which is aggregated at various levels, and there is a capital which is self-perpetuating in terms of the rotation and the money coming. And I think there are always qualitative improvement required in the systems. But the basic genesis of this mechanism of sustainability is there, which is social capital, finance availability, and last mile outreach through the CRPs and the cadre. The question of cadre sustainability is something which can discuss in another forum maybe. There could be good ideas there also.
Very well said, Samik. So, I will add to what Samik has said. How we look at sustainability is that this is a pre-inclusion strategy. These are those that, despite best efforts of NRLM, still got left behind. Therefore, once we've mobilized them, we've handheld them for some time, our attempt is to mainstream them into the existing self-help groups. And once they come into the network of the self-help groups, they obviously are linked to VO, CLF, the fund flow, etc. comes. That's one part of long-term sustainability. Secondly, while we are, rolling out in more states, what we are looking at is having CLFs to own these groups, and CLF having a watchful eye that they do not fall off. So within the social capital that NRLM already has, we'll have to re-coach and retrain our office bearers, our CLFs, our VOs to make sure that they're included and they are visible. They're totally out of the invisible life that they've so far led. As regards the climate sustainability, you'd be happy to know, John, that, and the audience, you'd be happy to know that in the programs that both our partners, NAJ as well as BRAC, is doing, climate resilience is a very significant part. And we are not only coaching them on that, we are also making them aware. Therefore, they are aware that if they take a particular livelihood, what are the pitfalls? And if there is a climate situation, what is it that they need to do? We are also trying to inbuild climate-related insurance. So if there are 5 days of a heat wave, that particular street vendor who could have gone out and sold stuff has not got. So just for those 5 days, there'll be a natural insurance payout from the program. A lot of it is still under discussion. We recently met with insurers of insurance companies, and they had some very big ideas, and we are talking with them also. So going forward, we'll just keep evolving the program. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am, and thank you for sharing your thoughts on sustainability. And through this conversation, I think we have covered the entire breadth of topics, from how do you think about designing a program like this, how do you execute at scale, how do you finance it, and how do you think about sustainability in the long run. We don't have more time to take more audience questions, but a lot of the questions are actually around sustainability. There were some questions around how can a government system implement such a nuanced program at scale on the ground and be responsive to the needs of the households. But you have touched upon that by saying that the CLFs have to take ownership of the last mile needs and be responsive to the needs. So I've skipped that question, but thank you so much, Shamik, and thank you so much, Smriti ma'am, for sharing your thoughts. Really important topic, really important moment in time in the country's journey towards elimination of poverty. And thank you to the audience as well for sharing your questions and for listening patiently. Have a great day. Thank you.